Hello everybody, I'm Conquering History Games and welcome to another guide on the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at a guide for a nation's political paths in Kaiserredux, or Kaiserredux, or KX, it is more colloquially known. We're going to be taking a look at the Black Revolt, which can spawn during the Second American Civil War. And I'm going to be going through, depending on how you want to count it, 12 to... somewhere between 12 and 14 different political paths, and I basically just had the idea to do this as well as a campaign where I play as the Black Revolt, which should be going up, if not at the same time as this video, at least within the next couple of hours or like later today, basically. And now I'll try to put timestamps up within the next couple of days for each specific path if you're looking for something specifically. Now, this is not going to be a guide for the entire nation, nor am I going to talk about every effect that every tree has. If you guys are interested in that, I guess I could do a follow-up video. But this is basically just showing you how to get to specific paths. And, wait, did I already say it? But, yeah, I just had this idea to do this for Black History Month, which is a thing in the United States every month of February for the last few decades. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. There's going to be a lot of cutting in this video, but I'll try to explain what's going on in between. The cutting is just to save time, because this video is going to be quite long enough without me unpausing and pressing forward every time I want to get to a new event. Alright, now we're back in a save file where the Black Revolt has spawned during the Second American Civil War. So the way that it works, it's actually very simple to do. All you have to do is you gotta, when the Second American Civil War begins, choose to play as the Constitutional American Republic. That's what they're initially going to be known. Basically, the party, I need to try not to say basically a million times during this video, but essentially, they are this like neo-Confederate movement led by the old Democratic Party. You're going to want to get William Joseph Simmons in charge here. Just give in to the Klan. Let the Klan do everything they want to do. And then you're going to go, when you get to his political path, which is actually over here. Yeah, the Invisible Empire. You're going to want to start heading towards anything that suppresses the black population more, especially going towards black laws. And just always take hard pro-Klan, anti-black decisions. It's pretty obvious. And then eventually the Black Revolt will pop up. There doesn't seem to be a hard trigger for it. It just gets more and more likely as time goes on. And so then it will spawn, and you're initially going to be radical socialists with W.E.B. Du Bois in charge. But then you have so many different options. So what I'm going to do is we're going to kind of go branch by branch. Because, for example, the first decision I'm going to show you, it'll split in half which kind of political alignment you want to go for. But then there's more branches after that. So, anyway, we'll come back to the first major decision. Now, the first decision you're going to get that's actually relevant towards choosing your political path is going to be the Nationalist campaign. There are some other events that happen earlier. You're going to get an event about instituting a draft or not. It does not matter in terms of your political path. You're also going to get an event regarding reinforcements, basically leftist reinforcements for the Black Revolt. That also has nothing to do with what path you take. It just affects the popularity of certain political parties. But you could still have the leftists grow more popular and then take a right-wing ideology later. So the Nationalist mark is essentially the UNIA, aka the Universal Negro Improvement Association, and the NOI, which is the Nation of Islam, are collaborating on a nationalist campaign. So those two parties are your paternal autocrats and your national populists, respectively. If you choose to tolerate them, obviously this is going to boost the national populist popularity, and then you're going to get another choice later, which we're going to look at now. Shortly after you choose to tolerate the existence of the Nationalists, you're going to get this event March On, which will give you 3 different options. The first one we're going to look at is we cannot afford to stop them by force. So this, of course, will open up the possibility for 2. It's essentially you're going to get to choose which of the far right that you want in charge, which actually sometimes take, the Nationalist March will succeed. We are in their hands now, so the National Populists and the Paternal Autocrats will get more popular, and then you're going to decide which of the 2 you want to keep, which here I was saying that I wasn't going to be letting things run, so let me cut back to where the decision is. So after you've said that we can't stop them by force, the leadership election will happen, and you can choose to pick either the Nation of Islam, which we'll take a look at first. So this is your first potential path. You're the Nation of Islam underneath Elijah Muhammad. Elijah Muhammad was the religious leader in real life who was the leader of the Nation of Islam for about 40 years. Most commonly known for being the one of the mentors of Malcolm X, as well as Muhammad Ali and Louis Farrakhan. So pretty influential culture in terms of African American culture during the mid 20th century. He's gonna give you the political modifier, the messenger, which increases your daily political power gain, your stability, your war support, and your daily national populist support will go up. I guess now is also as good a time as any to talk about foreign policy really quickly. So you have 3 different foreign policy branches that you could do here, and I guess I'll probably just review this at the end. But essentially, assuming leadership of Pan-Africa is if you go national populist, paternal autocratic, or you've gone totalist. Hub of the revolution is if you go totalist, syndicalist, or radical socialist, and there also has to have been elections. And then American identity is essentially all the centrists, so like the social conservatives, the social liberals, the social democrats, the market liberals, and also the authoritarian democrats. That lets you do this. And I'll go into detail a little bit about what that does at the end of the video. So, but yeah, if you just wanted a quick answer as to what goes where. Now, let's say you do go to the right, but you do not want the Nation of Islam in charge. The other decision you can make in the leadership election is you instead appoint the UNIA, which stands for the Universal Negro Improvement Association, and you're going to get James R. Stewart in charge, who is your figurehead president. So he gets a little bit more political power gain, but it hurts stability. I think the concept here is supposed to be that in actuality he's just a puppet for Marcus Garvey, who was the founder of UNIA. So Marcus Garvey, who is the guy in charge here, and he has some events, and we'll talk about him more later, but he was born in Jamaica, and that's where he founded the UNIA, but later on became influential in the northern part of the United States in black circles, particularly Harlem, New York City. So for those of you who are not Americans and don't know this, or maybe you're Americans and you just don't know this anyway, New York City is divided into several boroughs, and then Harlem is a subset of the borough of Manhattan. So it's a really specific area of New York City. But New York City's so freaking huge, like, it's got a bigger population than some whole United States. It's It almost has like several miniature cities within it, and you have like these subcultures that exist in the United States, or not in the United States. In the United States, but in New York City. Can you guys tell that I don't really have my notes going for me? So anyway, Marcus Garvey was really into ideas of like traveling as black African Americans back to Africa. He was really against the NAACP, which was the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, who I'm going to talk about a little bit more later. He didn't want to assimilate into white American society. He was a big time into like black nationalism and things like that. And so in our timeline, and I think also in this one, he ends up getting deported as an undesirable alien in the mid-1920s, and I think that would have still happened in this timeline because that wasn't anything that had to do with like World War One, so it wouldn't really have been changed. So yeah, later on when he gets the event, I believe it is him speaking from Liberia, and so but I guess he just doesn't come back, so you can get so when you create the Republic of New Africa, you have this figurehead president in charge, but I'm sure that the concept is supposed to be that Marcus is pulling the strings. Anyway, let's go look at some more decisions, shall we? So now we're back at the March On decision, which is what happens after you choose to tolerate the Nationalists. Now we're going to take a look at what happens if you choose to rout them. Now, when you rout them, that's initially going to give popularity to the party popularity of the Totalists, but what you're essentially doing is you're rejecting the possibility of a far-right government, so you're going to say the Nationalists will fail. And then you're going to get a decision deciding what the actual future of the nation is going to be, which, I'll come back to in a second. After you've routed the Nationalists, you'll get the future of the nation choice, where you're essentially drawing up the Constitution and you're determining what kind of system that you want. If you do the People's Amendments, this is going to be where you structure yourself in a way that you're influenced by radical socialism, syndicalism, and things like that. And so we're going to first take a look at all the including of the People's Amendments decisions. After the People's Amendment goes through, you're going to have union elections. There's not going to be a primary. And you actually have 5 different people here available for 5 different paths. And we're going to go through them one by one, and I'm going to talk about them. So political path choice number 3 is where you elect the Radical Socialists under W.E.B. Du Bois. So his full name is William Edgar Beauregard Du Bois, so that's why we just call him W.E.B. or W.E.B. Du Bois. Now, he was one of the founders of the NAACP, and that is in fact his ability as a leader. So this increases his political power, gain, stability, war support, and the daily radical socialist support. The NAACP stands for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Pretty obvious what their goal is. Was really focused in like anti-lynching efforts, eliminating racial barriers, trying to end desegregation and things like that. And there's political path number 3. Path number 4, and the second under the People's Amendments path, is you can elect Paul Robeson and the Syndicalists, which oh yeah, by the way, almost every one of these movements has a different flag. Some of them you have different ideologies that have the same flag. So, for example, the Authoritarian Democrats and the Syndicalists have the same flag. But yeah, just kind of, I'm not going to go through them individually. Just check it out in your, as we go through. Now, Paul Robeson, for him, you get author, actor, athlete, which increases stability, political power gain, and war support. Really famous mid-20th century black man for a lot of reasons, way too many to get into, but he was a concert artist, he was a famous film actor, he was a famous football player, a stage actor, really well educated, extremely political. In our real life, he was a communist. Was very notable as part of the Harlem Renaissance. Extremely critical of the United States in regards to race relations. In fact, I think there were 2 people who presented it, but after World War II, when the United Nations was founded, and then there was an actual legal definition of genocide created by them, he presented a paper called We Charge Genocide, where he accused the United States of engaging in genocide via complicity by not attempting to fix the lynching issues that were going on in the United States. And now, having said that, he did, even though he was publicly communist and anti-American, there was this incident when, this was back in the Soviet Union, when Stalin was starting to crack down on the Jews after that whole doctor's plot thing. Paul Robeson was in in the country. So this must have been in the late 40s, because Robeson eventually got his passport revoked by the United States, and they did that for a lot of reasons, one of which so that he wouldn't be able to tour anymore internationally and get money. So when he was there, he was scheduled to do a concert, and he ended up performing in Yiddish as like an act of protest at this like really public event. Anyway, so yeah, this is how you get the syndicalists elected. Political path number 5, James Ford. Now, this is a guy who I figure that you guys probably know already, so I might not talk to any. Oh, that is a great picture of him. Anyway, it just pops. He looks alive. Anyway, so here's your silent workhorse. So he's going to give you additional political power gain. So like I said, you guys probably already know him. He's the one who was the vice presidential candidate for William Foster in the 1930s. First ever African American to be on a presidential ticket. And he's the one who, if you've ever seen just look up self-determination for the black belt, and you'll find pictures that show what I'm talking about. So anyway, James Ford had been a prominent African American communist in real life. He was a World War I vet. Afterwards, he became a parcel post dispatcher in the United States Post Office, which anyone living in the United States in the last couple months will tell you is that time in the post office is what turned him into a foaming at the mouth communist, obviously. It probably wasn't anything else like the fact that he had been working on a railroad when he was as young as 13 and had been a machinist and a blacksmith and a laborer, and had to fight against racial discrimination both in the Army, out of the Army, at various places of work, wasn't able to find a skilled job. It definitely was his time in the United States Post Office that turned him into a communist. Dry humor aside, he's just one of the branches of totalism that you can get. Now, if you get him, the totalists at the beginning of the game, or the beginning of when the Black Revolt starts, are known as the Unity League, because it's just a unity of like a ton of different ideologies, or I guess you should say subdivisions of totalism, because there's 4 different totalist paths that you can go down. So once he's in charge, though, it becomes known as Socialist Party Centralist Faction. Centralist, all right, not centrist, centralist. Those are different. Anyway, so that's path number 5. For political path number 6, you elect Ben Davis, who is another totalist, but a different branch of totalism here. And I pulled this up in the background so you guys can see which of the 3 paths there are. So it's essentially, this one is when you go James Ford. Over here is when you go Ben Davis, who we're going to look at now. And over here is Harry Haywood. Anyway, so when you get Ben Davis in charge, you get Totalist Chairman, which is going to hurt your daily political power gain, increase your resource gain efficiency, your factory output is increased, as is your military factory construction speed. Now, Ben Davis, Benjamin Jefferson Davis, actually, I should say, because if we go over here, this is just one thing I want to point out so that there's not confusion. There's actually a few Ben Davises running around. You've also got General Benjamin O. Davis Jr. and Benjamin O. Davis Sr., both of whom I talk about in my Black Revolt campaign. But these are different Benjamin Davises than the one that we've just elected. This is Jefferson Davis. What a name, huh? So anyway, in real life, he was a communist and a lawyer, who during the 40s was elected onto the city council of New York City. And then, in the late 40s, when the Smith Act went through, because of his association with the Communist Party, he was, convicted and actually would go to prison on the grounds of, because of his association, that he was conspiring to overthrow the federal government. So after he spent a few years in jail, he later was freed and continued to be very politically active, promoting civil rights and of course communism. Now he's in charge of when he takes control. The Totalists become the New Communist League, which are basically Jacobins. They call their movement Black Jacobinism, which makes sense because he was a real hardcore pro-Soviet dude, defended a lot of the things that they did, including the invasion of Hungary in 1956 and things like that. So makes sense that he would be the black Jacobin leader in this timeline. Definitely a bit of a deep cut in terms of like black African American politicians. But I guess whoever worked on this, they did their research. And coming in at political path number 7, the last one of the People's Amendment paths, you can elect Harry Haywood. So I probably should have pulled up some notes for Harry. So Harry Haywood was, let's first pull him up. You might recognize this picture. He's a rabble-rouser, so you get your additional daily political power gain and a little bit of war support. No stability, though. He was yet another, in real life, communist. His book, his autobiography is in fact called Black Bolshevik. So he was kind of a, what would you call him? I guess an intellectual, because he was really concerned with like the philosophy of where ideas of communism and racial cultural issues meet. So he was kind of less of a, like, he was a political figure, but I don't think he actually ever held office at any time. Now, he was a member of the African Blood Brotherhood early in his life, and we're going to talk about who they are later. But then he later on joined the CPUSA, the Communist Party of the United States of America. Spent time studying in the Soviet Union, where he actually took the name Harry Haywood, because I don't actually remember what his birth name is right now, but he changed his name to Harry Haywood because Harry and Haywood were the names of his mother and his father, respectively. Anyway, so he was a really international figure in terms of like being an African American communist, because like I said, he spent time studying the Soviet Union. He knew Ho Chi Minh, and of course he was like, even though he was a communist first, he would try to bring attention to these racial issues, like contextually what he, like, pushing these ideas of like what communism has to do for black people in America. Also a war vet for several wars, actually. He fought in World War One, and I think he lied about his age to get into World War One. He fought in the Spanish Civil War alongside in the Popular Front with the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, where he was a commander, and that's where he also met Langston Hughes. And he also was in the Merchant Marines during World War II. So he was pro-Stalinist, and by extension, he was pro-Foster, between the whole Foster versus Browder thing. Which I wonder how many of you are not. I shouldn't be accusatory towards you guys, but I do wonder how many people who like play Kaiserreich actually are understanding at all any of the differences between Foster and Browder yet, or if everybody just still likes Browder because you can rhyme louder with Browder. Anyway, go check out my Foster campaign and learn a little bit about them. Anyway, so yeah, once again, prominent communist, a little bit of a more intellectual guy, less a politician. So when he gets elected, the Totalists become known as the Trade Union Unity League, and you'll open up that branch of the tree. All right, so we're done with all the People's Amendment paths. Now we're going to take a look at how you get the centrists in charge. Now, in order to get a centrist leader of the Black Revolt, you've got to get the Future of the Nation event again. So remember, you got to tolerate the nationalists, but then rout them. And then you pick, instead of including the People's Amendment, you go with a liberal constitution instead. Then you're going to get a series of primary events where you're going to get to choose who your potential leaders are. Now, I'm not going to go over every single one of them, because the centrists have primaries, so almost all of them have multiple potential candidates, and it would just make this video go on way too long. But I will show you the primary screens so you know who your potential leaders are. On second thought, I thought it'd be faster to just go this way. So this is election day. If you've gone with the Constitution, the primaries have already come and gone, and you're going to have 4 different parties to choose from: the Social Democrats under the Socialist Party, the Social Liberals under the Liberty Party, the New Republican Party, which is the Market Liberals, can take charge. And then there is the Peace Party. So for all of these, elections will continue into the future. They should happen every 4 years from the point that you elected them. So if you go with the Socialists, your initial potential leaders are A. Philip Randolph, W.E.B. Du Bois, who's in charge here. He actually can he can still be elected, but just as a social democrat instead of a radical socialist, because the Socialist Party actually encompasses both of those ideologies. There's just the different branches of them. Also think back to how I was showing with the Totalists. If you put Ford's in charge, then the Socialist Party centralist party ends up being in charge here. So basically these are political paths: 8, 9, 10, and 11. So to review, you could do Philip Randolph, W.E.B. Du Bois, Robert Sengast Abbott, Social Democrats. If you go Social Liberal, you could do Roy Wilkins, Edith Sampson, Thurgood Marshall. If you do the New Republican Party, the Market Liberals, you could get Zora Neale Hurston, C.C. Spalding, or Henry Lincoln Johnson, which, again, kind of like with the Davis thing, there is a Henry Johnson here who's a general. This is not the one who you would elect. I don't think Henry had a middle name, and I think Henry Johnson wasn't even his birth name, but the one you would elect is Henry Lincoln Johnson. And then the Peace Party does not actually have a primary. You instead get this guy called Father Divine, who was basically a cult leader, but he was kind of a really peaceful cult leader, not one of those mass suicide Jonestown's cult leaders. And so he's kind of funny because when you get him elected, you get his power is called God himself, which increases your political power gain, but it lowers your stability, but it does increase your war support. But yeah, he's the undisputed one in charge. And that's 8, 9, 10, and 11 terms of political paths here. And then for Zora Neale Hurston, because she is one of the women who you could potentially get elected, so I thought I'd point her out especially. She gets Preserver of Culture, which increases political power gain and stability. Most of these are kind of the same. There's just like slight differences between them. Anyway, so let's now take a look at what I'm going to call decision for political path 12A. And then I'll talk later about 12B. Okay, so you guys remember a million years ago when we tolerated the Nationalists and then their marching? Well, we never went into the third. We still have not gotten to the third potential option here. And this is where you empower Young. Young being Charles Young. So I talk about him in detail in my campaign, because he's a general, so that doesn't give away which path I take. But historically, he had already been dead for quite a while by the time we're reaching 1938. But I think that it's sort of okay that he's still alive, because he historically died in Nigeria where he got an infection. And in this timeline, I don't think he would be hanging out there, because I don't know why Germany would ask an American military officer to go help them out in there. I'm perfectly fine with him being alive. So he was the highest ranking black man in the army at the time of his death. So it makes sense that he's the one who essentially could become MacArthur. He is the authoritarian Democratic path, aka the Republican Army, aka the Americanists. So this is one of 2 ways that you could get him into power. And we're going to go into I'm going to first explain the second way once we look at another branch. Alright, now this event, Garvey denounces us. This is what happens when, do you guys remember what I said was the first branching path where the Nationalists march? Well, if you choose, instead of tolerating, to say we're going to end them now, then Marcus Garvey, who's the guy I talked about earlier, from Liberia, is going to condemn your actions. And if you just decide to ignore him and say, no, we stay the course, that'll then put you on the path towards centrism or going to the left again. So you'll get the decision, do you want to do the People's Amendment or not? So if you say, no, we stay the course, it's fundamentally the same as if you went for the march and then routed them. And of course, like, you could pause the video and look at the specific differences in like manpower, political power, and all those sorts of things as you go forward. I would maybe recommend, if you're gonna, you know, go elected totalist or anything on the left, I would probably say you should go with take the path where you initially like the nationalists and then route them, because then there's an 8% additional totalism popularity given. And so then by the time you elect a totalist, if you're going that path, you're at almost 50% popularity already. Anyway, so what you're going to want to do then, so we can actually look at some other stuff, is you're going to want to appoint the African Blood Brotherhood. That's basically the last path that we have to look on, path 13. But before that, you're going to get another decision, or maybe not, or maybe we're just going to sit here forever. Okay, yeah, the Nationalists will be released because you're saying, you know what, I'm sorry, let's let them be in the government. So one problem solved. Create another, and let's actually talk about what the African Blood Brotherhood was. So the African Blood Brotherhood, whose logo is here on the left. It's kind of hard to see. It's really detailed. But they called themselves the Negro Rock of Gibraltar. By the way, I hope nobody's been insulted by me saying things like colored and Negro and stuff. Like, you know, as I said during my campaign, and I've said on live streams too, I think we're allowed to say Negro now because, like, just as a general population, since, you know, people have been saying the Negro Leagues with the baseball thing. But also, I think you guys know that I'm not trying to defame or be insulting to anybody. You know that I'm using these words in an academic sense, I guess you could say. So if I've offended anyone, I'm very sorry about that. But I didn't mean to, I guess. I would say. Anyway, so the African Blood Brotherhood, they're kind of, you can kind of say that they are horseshoe theory come to life, because they're nationalists. They were really pro black liberation and stuff. But they also were socialistly minded. So they eventually just fused into the Communist Party in the 1920s. So anyway, you're gonna get this event. Dusé Mohammed elected, who is the head of the African Blood Brotherhood. You could choose to appoint Young, and so that's why I was calling it Path 12B, because here you could put Young and the Republican Army and the Americanists in charge. Or instead, you could say it's not right, and then the African Blood Brotherhood is gonna win. So this just takes a second. Yeah, and like you know, Marcus Garvey, even though here he was, you know, saying, oh, you can't do this, you can't hurt the nationalists. Like them and Marcus Garvey definitely had issues. Like, they sometimes worked with each other, sometimes they didn't. And like, they didn't like that Garvey, for example, would meet with the KKK and stuff like that. So just like that, there you go. You have the African Blood Brotherhood in power. Give it a second. It's going to change over. You are now known as the United Peoples of Africa. And there you had it. And the Totalist League, or the Black Unity League, whatever, becomes known as the African Blood Brotherhood. So, that's there you have it. 13 paths and some change, I guess you could say. Let me just really quickly review, though, if you're trying to do something specific in terms of foreign policy, what each of these does. So if you assume leadership of Pan-Africa, you will actually straight up annex Liberia. Like, it doesn't become a puppet, this becomes part of your country. So that's kind of interesting. And then you can come down here and you basically, well, as the title implies, this is where if you want to get involved with going into Africa, so you take the Grain Coast, you can fight Egypt, you fight everybody. Yeah, it's essentially, if you want to go into Africa, you assume the leadership of Pan-Africa, and you can also get cores on quite a lot of land. You can choose to dominate the Caribbeans, where you'll get claims on a lot of it, or you could do the liberate of it, where you instead get puppet focuses on them. There's just slight differences here. You guys can highlight it and check it out yourself. Now, Hub of the Revolution you can also do as Totalists because, okay, Leadership of Pan-Africa to review. It's Totalists, National Populists, and Paternal Autocrats, but it's only specifically the brand of... Well, actually... Actually, no, I think you can do Leadership of Pan-Africa if you get elected Totalist, but if you're going to do the elected Totalist path, well, then you might as well do Hub of the Revolution. So yeah, this is you have to be Totalist, Syndicalist, or Radical Socialist, and there's been elections. So this one, via this path, you could do the Liberate, but you can't do the Dominating of the Caribbean. You can support the CSA because, like, the concept is, okay, the CSA will get the rest of the United States, but we're going to be down here in the South, and we're going to get involved in, like, the Caribbean and different things like that. So, like, right here, you can go into Central America. You can join the Third Internationale, which I don't believe that Pan-Africa is able to do. Because it's like too self-focused, it's too nationalist to get involved in like a foreign alliance. And you could also go after the French national state and Deutsche Mittelafrika. You can't go after all the rest of Africa, like, you know, Somalia and in Ethiopia and Egypt and stuff like that, because you're specifically going after the colonial powers there. So that's why you get the war goals on Deutsche Mittelafrika and French national state. And then finally, you have the American identity, which is where if you go centrist or authoritarian democratic, where you're not going to get involved in Africa. And you can choose to reach inwards, but I just don't know who the heck would do this. This is clearly just a tree that's meant for the AI, where you just don't do anything. Or you could choose to reclaim the states, and then you're going to be able to get war goals on the other branches of the United States. You could also choose to reintegrate if you want, but again, I'm not sure why a human player would do that. This is probably just an AI only thing. Or I guess if you want to roleplay, you could do that. Yeah, so basically, conquering a bunch of Africa, kind of a middle ground, funding rebels and stuff, just being anti-colonial powers, and then hanging out here in the United States. So just, you know, keep that in mind when you're just trying to decide which political path you want to take. So that's the end of the guide. Please check out, I'll try to put some links up on the screen, but yeah, check out my, I won't say what path I take, but I've recorded a Black Revolt campaign. And because there's so many branches, I might kind of do the same thing that I did with my United States of America campaign in the New Order, where I'm uploading the pre-recordings, but I'm also doing some live streams. No promises on the live streams, though, because I want to spend a lot of this month introducing some new games to the channel. But I hope you like this. I hope you like that. And if you really enjoyed the video, please be sure to subscribe and click the bell so that you'll always be notified whenever new videos go up on the channel. If you really want to support me, feel free to follow the link to my Patreon down below. All the money goes to help supporting the channel. I'm Conquering History Games, and I'll see you around. Happy Black History Month.